What up, Player Profiler Nation? It's your boy Matty Kiwoom. Welcome to the latest episode of The Game Plan. Today, we're diving into the OTA minicamp news. I got a very, very special guest on today who's going to be bringing his NFL big picture brain onto the game plan. But we're going to use his thoughts. We're going to dive into some of his takes and see how we can help that mold our Dynasty rankings as we head into training camp. So, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, get out your pens, get out your pads, and let's start game planning to dominate in Dynasty football. Ladies and gentlemen, you know our guest here. You know him from The Decision Point, one of the most longest running, one of my favorite podcasts on here, the Player Profile Network, my man, Anand Nanduri. Anand, what is going on, my friend?
Matty, it's good to see you, buddy. It's been a long time since Detroit. It feels like a lot longer than
it feels kind of crazy, right? How long it feels away.
Yeah, landscape changes real quick in the NFL, and they keep us busy. They keep us fed, man. Every day there's something different.
Yes. There's someone behind the scenes in the NFL like, how can I make this a 12-month-a-year thing? And they're damn near close, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, they give us like maybe 3 weeks.
Yeah, and we're still finding stuff to talk about.
Right, and then there's Trayvon Diggs chirping at people and Malik Nabers chirping back. So, there's always something. Now that the players are half the content. So, 24/7, 365 for us these days, man.
Oh, it is. And it's we're sickos for a reason. We love it. But I'm glad you came to the show. Super happy. I mean, obviously, I love Decision Point. You and Matt's one of my favorite shows because you guys dive into the inner workings of the NFL and you get kind of beyond the fantasy scope. But I think when I listen to that, I still get so many good nuggets from your conversations. And I use that to craft my thoughts on Dynasty, whether it be rankings, trading for players, valuing certain offenses, all that stuff. So I wanted to have you on so that we could talk a little OTAs, mini camps in this little 3-week break before, the real training camp kicks off. And before you know it, Hard Knocks is here. The Labor Day is here. Boom, the season is here, right? So I'm going to start it with this. What are your overall thoughts in regards to the NFL offseason and, more importantly, the reports that come out this time of year?
I think a lot of it is positioning. You've got player agents, especially guys that are trying to get new contracts that are holding out. Matt and I talk about on the Decision Point a lot of the time when contract news comes out. Based on what you hear in the contract language, you can tell whether it came from the player side or the team side and kind of who's trying to beat the other to the punch in terms of how the news lands to the public. In this case, it's a little bit different because now player agents have their players' social media accounts to play with, right? They're unfollowing teams. They're posting TikToks, replying to people, going out on hot mics when they're caught out on the town by TMZ or by whoever. It's crazy because you have, these innocent fan interactions with their favorite players that have now turned into an opportunity for someone to create a viral soundbite or, to get reposted 500,000 times on Twitter. And it's just kind of changed the dynamic of the information we get. I talked a lot about how back in the day, ESPN used to curate all of our content for us. Right.
That's why we love
if you wanted to follow sports, you were watching ESPN and watching whatever they put out there. Now everybody's curating their own content. Everybody's in a sense creating their own content. And so I think in terms of how we get reporting and the way that it's delivered to us is a little more uncontextualized. It's more people are trying to be the first to report something than really doing a lot of cohesive work to bring that to you. And so now you've got agents playing the game, you've got reporters playing the game, you've got players playing the game, coaches, GMs, owners. It's kind of the Wild West, and it makes it a lot of fun for us because we get to read the tea leaves and kind of give you our 2 cents about it. But overall, in terms of this phase of the year, it's a lot like pre-draft season. There's hype for justified reasons. There's hype for non-justified reasons. There's contract-related talk for justified, non-justified reasons. It's all just kind of a smorgasbord of nonsense. And, a lot of it matters because we need it to matter. But a lot of it is also just out there to be out there.
Right. Reports, they're fluid in terms of the importance and how exciting they are and how much we should give credit to that actual report, to that take. Because like you said, a lot of these guys are trying to be first now because if you wait to be right, you're 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th in terms of getting it out there. But what's great about it, why we love it for fantasy, is because you're always getting a reaction. Whether it's a good source, a bad source, it does not matter. markets change, strategies shift, player takes, they take on a whole thing of their own at this time of year. And it's fun. We get to take advantage of it. Do you typically, like, let's just put it, we'll just blanket statement. Do you typically find that most reports are credible or not credible? Or important, I should say, because credible always comes from good sources. But is there do you typically are skeptical or less skeptical?
I think it depends on who the source is, truly, because the way that a source will frame something. Here's a great example. Adam Schefter is a very reliable source of information, as is Rap Sheet, as are multiple guys that are out there that do this for a living. But the problem is they are now somewhat incentivized in order to get that inside information to frame certain things certain ways, as we've seen time and time again when Adam's gotten into hot water over certain things. Obviously, very respected journalist. He does great work. Yeah. There are times where he is carrying water for an agent or carrying water for a player or a GM or a head coach. And I think that's where you have to really kind of consider the context of when and why you're getting these things, instead of just, hey, so-and-so wants to be traded, or so-and-so wants to be cut, or didn't sign their franchise tender. I think a big part of it is contextualizing who said it. Why do you think they said it? Because they didn't for no reason. Nobody's just throwing out opinions for this.
Right.
Opinions at that level. And then who has something to gain from what just came out of whoever's Twitter account, mouth on TV, whatever. So I don't think they're either credible or non-credible immediately just based on the time of year. I think it's more of a, hey, why would they put this out now versus, they could have done this 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago or 3 months from now.
It's always worth a little bit of investigation. That's a good one. I like that. Who is making money or who's being affected by this type of whatever statement, take, opinion, leak, whatever it is. I like that. I'm going to put that in the back of my head when I'm kind of going through. You mentioned Schefter, you mentioned Rapport, the big ones, but do you have some credible, and I don't mean credible as in the ones you're not going to list are not credible, but the ones your go-to, certain beat writers around the league that, I've gotten a good nugget from this person before, or this person at least gets me in the right track. Who are some of your more followed accounts for this time of year?
I'm going to replace this with a blanket statement. We hate aggregators. It's one of the most annoying, the type, the accounts that are just, dove, and the guys that are just regurgitating stuff. There's one aggregator account that's not an aggregator account. They're an aggregator, but not in a negative context. It's an account called 32 Beat Writers, and they do a fantastic job of basically most of their stuff is just retweeting beat writers from all 32 NFL teams. And so, if you're a Steelers fan, and you're looking for, direct from the source information, they will help you there. They'll help you, as they retweet things, find Steelers guys that you like. If you're a Rams fan like me, they'll help you find, a Jordan Rodriguez who came over from Carolina. I think she's done really great work. I think when you have a resource like that allows you to see so much at once and kind of curate your own as you run through it, I think that's probably a more valuable tool than me sitting here and telling you 3 or 4 guys that I think are credible, just because everybody's going to find a voice in a beat writer that they like. And, everybody likes information presented to them a little bit differently. So I think there's a different flavor for each person in terms of what beat writer on your beat you like the most. But I think they do a fantastic job of just getting all of that together in a non-awful way. Let's put it.
They're not there for the clicks. They're there to curate the information for the people who are seeking it out. And if, there's going to be a million great nuggets, game planners that you hear from Anand today that I recommend you take note of. That might be the number one, though, on the list. The 32 Beat Writers is fantastic because there's no opinion. There are no takes. There's really no rhyme or reason. It is just a curation daily of the quotes they're seeing on Twitter, the beat writers who are saying these things, and they're putting them on a website form that you can now follow. And they're also a great follow on X because they will retweet so-and-so from Cleveland, so-and-so from Tampa Bay, so-and-so from Green Bay. They don't care what the news is. They just get it to you. Mm-hmm. So if you want to stay up in your dynasty game and you want to take it to the next sicko level and be, inundated with football in June like us, 32 Beat Writers, great recommendation. Big shout out for that call because I do agree. I'm kind of just getting into it over the last few weeks, but man, the information's sick and it just keeps you plugged in as much as you can from wherever you are about everyone, which is kind of the impossible task of fantasy, is predicting the future and keeping your grasp around 32 teams and, hundreds of players. But now I want to get into the fun stuff here, my friend. So we've all heard, the drum beat gets louder. That's a phrase you will hear on a million shows right now. And it's for good reason. That is literally what it is. We're listening for a drum beat. But whose hype are you buying? Give us a report. Give us something that you've heard that you're taking to heart, and we should when we're evaluating our dynasty landscape.
Yeah, this is not so much a report that I have any kind of inside information about. My buddy Frank Michael Smith, I'm sure you guys have seen him on Twitter, on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you find him. He threw something out there yesterday that I thought was super interesting about how Pittsburgh has kind of changed their model a little bit. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just in a, hey, we need offense. Basically, we need something out of our quarterback. And in bringing in Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, they've created a quarterback room that has pretty high ceilings, but very low floors for, what they're doing. So it's either going to be one of them works out and this was a really good idea for us, or, blow it up and start over again next year. I think the interesting thing that Frank put out there was, Seattle's probably, Tyler Lockett's probably the odd man out if Jackson Smith and Jigba is as good as we think he is. And so it makes sense for them to move him. And if Pittsburgh is trying to squeeze the last bit of Russell Wilson's career out of him, it makes all the sense in the world to give him his favorite safety blanket that he's ever played with. There are some guys that have that 1-2 that you can't teach. And Russ and Tyler Lockett definitely had it. So I thought that was a really interesting throw out there. And given that that's a possibility, I think, if we were to see that, I think Russell Wilson's price, especially for single season, but dynasty as well, would change rather quickly. I think Tyler Lockett, JSN's price would change rather quickly also. And so those are kind of the pieces involved in trades like that, where I think, even if that doesn't work out and they move on from Russell Wilson, let's say they give Justin Fields a year next year. I think whenever you can kind of see the string pull all the pieces together, I think those are kind of the guys, especially on the lower end, because they're not going to cost you much. It's not none of these guys other than maybe JSN involved there would cost you all that much. Those are the kind of things that you kind of throw a dart and you're like, yeah, is it worth throwing a rookie third, rookie fourth at somebody and seeing if they're willing to bite the line on, a 31-year-old wide receiver that might at the end of this season have some fun games for you if you're really chasing something.
I love this. This is back-to-back weeks on it where Tyler Lockett buy scenarios were painted. So listeners, go buy Tyler Lockett before it's too late. 2 weeks in a row, it's got to be a sign. The price is crazy cheap. He's being valued around 140, 150 in most dynasty platforms. You could get him cheap. And if he goes to Pittsburgh, this makes sense on a number of levels. I was saying earlier in the week when I was talking to Cody that people need to start preparing for Justin Fields to not see the field in 24.
Yeah.
It seems like they are all in on Russell Wilson. He's inviting George Pickens out to run reps and throw with him while these 3 weeks of leave are happening. He seems like a guy they're going to want to keep around. They're going to give him every chance to succeed. Also, on top of the Lockett potential trade, player-wise, Calvin Austin has been kind of that Tyler Lockett hopeful in terms of his play style. If the Steelers can just go, you know what, let's not develop Tyler Lockett. Let's go get Tyler Lockett for Russ. Oh, man, just like you said, that is a string that pulls all the entities together and paints a pretty clear picture. And that's why I had you on, brother, because I wanted to hear some of this stuff. Now, I'm so glad we're pre-recording because I got a few days now to go and get me some Tyler Lockett before the folks are saying, he ain't available. So thank you. I love that call. That is a good bit of kind of reading between the lines there and seeing some pieces of the puzzle come together.
Yeah, I think another one that makes a lot of sense is, it depends on who's in your league and how they view him. But it's pretty clear and established now that T. Higgins isn't a wide receiver one for fantasy purposes. And unless the guy in your league that has him is a Bengals fan, they're probably valuing him as they should. I just think that if you look down the road 1 year, yes, there's this year where you have the franchise tag that he's going to sign and he'll basically be there for a year. They called it a 1-year extension. It was not. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
But, even beyond that, if there are two scenarios in which T. Higgins basically outperforms whatever value you can get him for right now. One is he goes to a different team and becomes a true number one, their number one option. I don't think he's an elite number one receiver in terms of winning a title. But, he will be someone's wide receiver one and command the volume that sitting there as a wide receiver one for somebody commands.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that option. The other option is the Bengals offense becomes more of a target funnel without a Tyler Boyd. And you kind of see more of the snap share distribution that he had last year turn into productive targets because the quarterback will again be Burrow. But he's one of those guys where I think initially we were all a little bit too high on him. And I think now the market may be a little too cool on what he can be, not just if he's in Cincinnati, but also if he gets a shot somewhere else. So he's the other guy that I'm kind of looking at and wondering, hey, like if the guy that has T. Higgins isn't trying to compete, is in a rebuild, I'm wondering, does it make sense to send an offer for him? So he's another guy that I have my eye on.
I love that because it gives you, the safety of the short term in terms of playing with Burrow in an offense that he's been successful in fantasy with already. But in the long term, it gives you a little bit of that extra room to grow in terms of a fantasy asset. And I don't care what he does in terms of the NFL landscape. T. Higgins' talent with 120 targets, sign me up, brother. I mean,
yeah,
I'm all in on that. I don't care what that means for the NFL, for us fantasy gamers. That would be sick, nasty. Now, give me honest. So what are some of these reports? What's some hype that you're fading? Something that you're just calling fugazi immediately on?
There's one, and that's my guy. I'm going right back to the Bengals. It's my guy. Love him. I am not, based on what we know, for fantasy purposes only, because in real life I think he's awesome. But for fantasy purposes, Joe Burrow's burned us just one too many times. Its health concerns me. The fact that he doesn't run enough concerns me. He's going to have that Kirk Cousins-esque path to being a top 5-6 QB every year. And I think we saw a little bit last year of what a CJ Stroud can be if you just rush a little bit more. Right. It doesn't have, you don't need to be Anthony Richardson as a rusher. You don't need to be Lamar Jackson. But if you rush just enough to elevate your floor to the point where you're basically a top 5-6 QB weekly, I think that's what would concern me about Burrow, along with the health. How much longer is he willing to run like he runs? Phenomenal football player. If we're talking about where do you want your QBs, he's right up at the top for me. It's just purely as a fantasy asset. There are concerns that I have there that are beyond just, how good do I think you are? That being said, is tied to Jamar Chase, is tied to T. Higgins. There's a lot of stuff there to like, but it's just please stay on the field for me for a year or two before I buy all the way back in. And then the other one is, I know that we're very excited about what the Atlanta Falcons offense can look like with Kirk Cousins. I am just, anyone that's coming off of an Achilles tear, that is an immediate, let me see you out on the field doing it before I buy anything. We got burned with this a little bit when it was Cam Akers. We got burned with this, I think there are going to be people that get burned on it this year with Aaron Rodgers. I think that the toughest part about kind of figuring out what the Falcons are doing is they're trying to throw things together and figure out what works. And I don't hate the plan by any means. It's just, you don't draft someone 8 overall and decide to sit them for 4 years. So my question becomes, if Kirk Cousins week 1, 2, 3, 4 is not the Kirk Cousins of old, and, just to bring it right back, Joe Burrow last year, first few weeks of the season, was not himself, was not 100%. You could see it. We were all worried. Is he going to get hurt again? I am horrified that Kirk Cousins will be that again. And so both of them for me are just, I'm not buying at current prices. I'm not rushing to sell them, but I'm totally fading the idea that either of them are going to be, high-end QB ones that carry you to titles.
The Atlanta thing is getting me a little nervous. It's because it's now coming out a little bit that now you could say if you're fading this report that came out or not, but really what they saw that convinced them to give him all that money was him throwing on a basketball court, which seems kind of irresponsible in terms of doling out money like that. But for me, it's the ankle in combination with Penix that has me nervous about the Kirk Cousins longevity and just the seriousness of the team, having him as their starting QB. Michael Penix can spin it. Michael Penix is not 21. He's 24. Michael Penix is ready to be a franchise quarterback. And if his ascension kind of matches up with the right descension of Kirk Cousins, whether it be health or what have you, I don't see a world where the Falcons just go, sit down, Penix. No way.
Matty, here's my concern. For all of these other scenarios that we talk about, whether it's Jordan Love, whether it's, take your pick of any, we're drafting the successor before our, our QB's time is up. The biggest problem that we have with Atlanta is Kirk Cousins has never taken a snap as a Falcon. We're entirely projecting what he will be as Atlanta's quarterback based on what he did with Minnesota. It may not look like that. He may be better. He may be worse. He may not be healthy. We don't know. He's never taken a snap for the Falcons. And so we're all really excited about the weapons around him and what that team could be. But there is so much concern about coming back from that injury later in your career, especially when you spend the kind of capital that they spent on Michael Penix. I'm very concerned about Kirk Cousins this year and going forward. And that's why I think, when people in your rookie drafts and people who, kind of were quote unquote forced to take Michael Penix, he's one of those guys that I'd be considering is, hey, if he gets in there, that's all it really takes. We saw it, right. What is it, 3, 4, 5 years ago? The Chargers told us it's going to be Tyrod Taylor no matter what. Doctor comes out, punctures his lung, and then we all sit there and say, yo, guys, what the fuck was that? You have this guy on your roster week 1, and you sat him for a known quantity in Tyrod Taylor. What were you doing? Justin Herbert goes on to have an incredible rookie season, is absolutely a top 5, 7 QB in the league. And, I'm not saying that that's going to be what Michael Penix is, but it only takes one wrong snap, one weird doctor issue for him to get out there, and then he may never come out.
And what was it? Herbert was the 7th pick. Penix is the 8th pick.
Yeah.
Draft capital is around the same. Production college is around the same. Yeah, I definitely see a picture that you're painting here that is getting me a little nervous about Cousins. But you're not nervous about the weapons, because I don't think it's really a decrease going from Cousins to Penix. So where are you valuing Drake London, Kyle Pitts the same regardless of who's the signal caller?
Yeah. I don't think you change it a ton. I think obviously having a rookie quarterback that hasn't done it at that level, that's going to have to adapt to game speed and so on and so forth, is a little bit different. But I don't think it's noticeably different. It may be different week to week this year, but in terms of dynasty rankings, I really don't think it matters all that much.
I have one more follow-up in regards to Burrow's pass catcher. Jermaine Burton, are you buying any of the hype around Burton? I like the prospect, but I'm getting more and more nervous that he's just not going to have any touches. He's not going to see the ball at all.
Jermaine Burton, you're talking about, if you want talent, like if you're just looking at pure talent, Jermaine Burton is about as talented as they get. They did a lot of work on him pre-draft. They were very concerned about, some of the off-field stuff that they had heard. And they did a deep dive and were comfortable. I think it was a 3rd round pick that they spent on him.
They used a pretty good draft capital on the kid.
And, I think whenever you have Higgins and Chase, because obviously they didn't know they were going to have Higgins. I think they felt pretty good about it for a year, but they didn't know that they were going to have Higgins yet. Yeah, I'd be a little bit concerned about what snap share it looks like. That's just natural because there's a log jam of guys that have been there. I just think at some point you're betting on talent, and that's never really a bad thing, especially when you have a QB like Burrow that is as accurate and as anticipatory as he is. That's a tough one, man. That's a great question, actually.
Because I like the prospect. I like his role in this offense, even as a number 3 receiver, but I'm just worried if I could, is it worth investing in a startup or in a rookie draft, or is it better off buying around Halloween if it's just not coming to fruition right now?
I think it's probably better to just buy around Halloween, even if the price may be higher. My major concern would definitely be will he outright win the number 3 job? More than that, I think Burrow is going to come back and be fine. I'm not worried about, injury, like re-injury risk. I'm not worried about any of that. It's more of just like, hey, dude, protect yourself and get through a season again fully because we know how special he can be. The problem is how many targets you have to get Jamar Chase, how many targets you have to get T. Higgins. I mean, Joe Mixon not being there is whatever to me. I didn't really think he was anything special. I just kind of thought he was a running back that was productive. They're kind of a dime a dozen, as we've seen.
Ton of volume for Mixon. That's what makes the Moss Chase Brown, debate.
Oh God,
so interesting is there are a lot of there's a lot of usage to be had in that position.
Yeah. And I mean, that is a valuable offense to be the running back in.
Yeah.
No question. It's the Bengals to me are so tough to figure out only because you have so much of your offense that's already funneled to 2 guys. And, when it comes to finding a third, I mean, Tyler Boyd is productive when he's out there. And usually when you have a wide receiver trio like that, and I think Jermaine Burton's more talented than Boyd ever was, but he's got to win that job before I feel good about throwing that dart. He's got to stay out of trouble and not do some head case locker room things that we've heard about. But if he stays on the straight and narrow and he gets on the field and, he has good chemistry with Joe, I see no reason why he can't really be more of a 2B or maybe even a 2A. And they have really, a 1A, a 1B, and like a 2A as their 3 wide receivers. Because I think, when you look at how they're going to have to pay T. Higgins, they would love nothing more than for Jermaine Burton to break out and not have to worry about paying T. Higgins $30+ million also. But I think that the way that goes down is going to be super interesting. But I'm with you. I think I'm more on the side of buy around Halloween once we've kind of seen those guys cycle in there and play their game.
And you did bring up a smart point in terms of buying. It doesn't have to come at a discounted price from today's price. If you get these questions answered, it'll be worth the extra investment that you may have to pay later on, but not accrue that risk that you would have to take on if you buy too early. I love this conversation, but next in a minute we're going to get into Anand's thoughts on dynasty. We're going to play a little dynasty, this or that, based on the draft and the OTAs and the mini camps and the off seasons. So stick around for that. But first, let's hear from today's sponsor.
Now, I know many of you are looking for a secret weapon for your Dynasty League, and I have it. It's called the Dynasty Dominator app. You go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's right there. It's $5 to download, and then every year it's $5 to load the next incoming class of rookies. You can add Superflex, add tight end premium. It's incredible because it allows you to look up players. It allows you to vote on whether a player is a buy, hold, or sell, and then see the market sentiment on that player. And you can compare their lifetime value rating from PlayerProfiler to their Dynasty ADP at the FFPC, all in the price lookup tool. And beyond that, we have a trade analyzer, so you'll never lose another Dynasty trade again. And in our settings, you can set this is a win now team, this is a rebuilding team, and then we let you compare players. Look at their metrics side by side, prospect metrics, NFL metrics. It's all there. It's $5 in the App Store. There's some add-ons for Superflex and to buy the upcoming rookie class. Every year, you're going to spend $5 on this thing, and it's going to be well worth it.
Matty Kiwoom, Anand Nanduri. The game plan here today, we're going to dive into the dynasty ranks here. We're going to play a little this guy, that guy. This is going to be fun. We got a bunch of them here. And you can go in rapid fire. You can dive into it. I want to take this where you want it to go, my friend. But we're going to start with a tough one. And I know you're a big fan of this guy. That's why I want to make sure he's out there. But Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud in dynasty?
I think that they're right side by side for me. And basically where your team is would determine who I would want. You have the known commodity in CJ. If you're not totally rebuilding, he'd probably be the way that I go. But if you are in a total rebuild, if it's ground zero and you just need, you're looking 2 to 3 years out minimum, Anthony Richardson would be the guy that I take. And the reason is because I think his rushing upside provides QB1 overall seasons in that kind of Josh Allen-esque vein. Many will remember when he was rookie or sophomore year, even when he wasn't a prolific passer, even when we didn't think about him among the best QBs in the league, he was still producing elite fantasy seasons. And so I think Anthony Richardson has more avenues for QB1 overall finishes and establishing himself as that Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts-esque level of
Right.
Overall QB. But I think the stability and the floor of like a QB 5, 6, 7, if he's healthy, that CJ provides is a little more valuable. It's just more of a, where is your team right now?
I agree with that. I know a lot of the consensus believes in the Konami quarterback and Anthony Richardson, but I think as a group, we need to kind of brainstorm the Justin Fields asterisk that goes to Konami code, that it can disappear like that, and your value just evaporates into nothing. We're kind of like Stroud. Maybe doesn't get into your top 3 in a given year, but he ain't falling outside of your top 5 ever. That kid's here to stay. And there's something to that safety that I think I'm going to start leaning towards. I'm going to start right now, and I decided to take Caleb over Kyler Murray, and I decided to take Jordan Love over Jaden Daniels. And I think that kind of was my realization moment where, yeah, I do kind of value the stability. I know you don't get the rushing upside, but the longevity,
It's
striker
also,
means a lot.
I think the other side thing that should probably be discussed about both these guys is their O-lines are great, and that's why they are where they are. Especially when you look at the bookend of tackles that CJ has, the offensive line that's in front of AR. I think that provides value for them. Also, offensive innovators. Sure. You've got really good teams around them. Both guys super bullish on this year and into beyond. I think it's just that's really a take your flavor preference. To me, personally, I lean Stroud ahead of Tick, but I love AR. And if somebody were to say, like, I have Anthony Richardson ahead of CJ Stroud in my Dynasty rankings, I wouldn't look at them crazy by any means.
If you can get a plus in terms of if you have Stroud and you're offering me Anthony Richardson plus anything, I'm taking it. Vice versa remains true, because I'm with you. They're pretty much back-to-back in Dynasty ranks. Let's talk about some rookie receivers. Rome Odunze or Malik Nabers?
It's tough for me because I think Rome Odunze is super talented, but Gimme Nabers' situation is, the talent is the talent. Side by side, I thought Nabers was just a tick ahead of where Rome was talent-wise. I think his situation is set up for him to be an absolute target hog. His entire early career. When the last time I hate to pull the parallel that everybody else has pulled, but it's basically, draft the receiver from LSU. He goes for 12 or 1,300 yards his rookie season. We're super excited about him. There was a guy that wore number 13 in that same uniform not horribly long ago that went out and did that. So the thing about the offense that the Giants are going to try to run is, I think Daniel Jones's mobility will allow Malik Nabers some of those deeper developing routes that, other quarterbacks that aren't as mobile may not allow. I think he's going to get some cheap 50, 60-yard chunk plays this year that, if your quarterback, we talked about it earlier, if your quarterback is Kirk Cousins, you probably just don't get. And that's okay. It's, your quarterback is your quarterback. If you find one that is worthy of paying or worthy of extending, you try to do it. But I think the Giants this year are a really tough sell for, actual football purposes. The Bears are a very easy buy for real football purposes. But when you have, Keenan Allen, when you have DJ Moore ahead of Rome Odunze, it's just a tough sell for me to ever put him in the category of Malik Nabers, who, even though I think the offense is significantly worse, I don't know long-term what their plans are at QB, whereas Chicago seems pretty solid. I think when you look at just Malik Nabers, the player, it's really tough to say that it's not Malik Nabers.
I'm going Malik. The projections are coming out, and the conservative ones have him seeing 115, 120 targets.
Yeah.
This type of separator with Brian Daboll, I don't care if it's me or you at quarterback. Give him 120 targets. This dude's going to feast in fantasy. I'm going to go with Malik Nabers as well. Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley?
Give me Josh Jacobs. And I
think that's going to be a good trade pick. I like that.
Give me Josh Jacobs. The problem that I have with Barkley is so much of running back production in terms of how we view them is pass catching and touchdown dependent. Those are if there are Konami rules for QBs, the Konami rules for running backs are you a pass catcher? Do you score touchdowns? nobody gives a shit who Detroit's RB2 is. At the goal line, they just hammer them over and over and over again.
Right.
And they provide you RB1 seasons, even though you watch them play. You're like, that wasn't really that impressive, was it?
These touchdowns can't keep happening. Well, yes,
right.
they can, my
So
friend.
that's my concern is the Eagles' goal line offense is let's push Jalen. Do you really think that they're going to change that to let's hand it to Saquon? I don't think so. And so the touchdown upside for Jacobs, where they're not going to do that with Jordan Love in Green Bay. I think Josh Jacobs, for me, is just, it's not by a lot. They're not either. Neither are guys that I'm super excited to roster in any format. But, I think for just a tick, give me Josh Jacobs.
We talked about what the teams can tell us in the offseason earlier in the episode. And in my opinion, the Green Bay Packers told us that they don't want two separate guys as much as they've had over the last few years. Because Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon brought very different things to the field. It was a tell to the defense what was going to happen based on who was on the field.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs is kind of that marriage between the tackles grinder in A.J. Dillon, but a guy that can make plays on the outside and catch the ball with some effectiveness like an Aaron Jones. So I think Josh Jacobs is in a spot to absolutely smash in 2024. I also wanted to, I know the Kellen Moore correlation with Philly, they're thinking there's going to be more wide open, but that could be good for Barkley in terms of pass catching, but it also could mean Jalen Hurts scampers in for 2-3 more 7-yard touchdown runs, and then the tush push ain't going anywhere. I like this talk because I think at first most people are going to go, obviously it's Barkley, but you're presenting some cases where I think we need to value Josh Jacobs a little bit more. This is a fun one. Essentially, I would say call it the tight end 1 and tight end 2 in terms of Dynasty, the approach with the youth. Sam LaPorta or Brock Bowers in Dynasty.
God, it's so tough. They're right there. Give me LaPorta. That was my guy last year. Every year, if you sign into Player Profiler, if you go in, every analyst that we have, every person on the staff has their my guys. And my guy headed into last year was Sam LaPorta. I just thought, it's a tight end from Iowa. 1, 2, every time he caught the ball in college, he was blowing the fuck out of somebody, just knocking people over.
Whoa, no diddy.
He was just rolling people over, man. I mean, that's what he does. And he's an athletic tight end. We loved the profile. Absolute gamer. Iowa tight ends usually are. And that's no disrespect to Brock Bowers, who I think is one of the better tight end prospects we've ever seen. I think him and Mayer in Vegas is so much fun because I think they're going back to that old school New England when it was Gronkowski and Hernandez. Let's just see if we can bully people with 2 tight ends and throw it anyway when they want us to run and run when they want us to throw. I think Brock Bowers absolutely has the profile and cachet and can be tight end 1 in Dynasty. I just don't see it happening immediately, and LaPorta's already there. So I think the seasons that it will take for LaPorta to catch, or for Bowers to catch LaPorta in terms of production, it might take a year, 2 years, 3 years. And I think those 3 years of LaPorta are significantly more valuable at this particular stage. But again, tight end value is here today and gone tomorrow. So it's another one of those positions where we feel really good about someone one year, and the next year we're sitting there like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the tight end position feels very fruitful right now. But before we know it, we could be right back to the dumpster fire we've grown accustomed to over these last handful of years. Now let's talk about some of the guys atop the Dynasty rankings at quarterback. Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen for you?
Give me Josh Allen. And I know that Jalen Hurts' rushing touchdowns are what they are. I know everybody expects Josh Allen's passing to come back down to earth now that Diggs is gone. Every elite quarterback that we've seen loses their number one weapon. And, the offense skews a little bit more towards running. The QB runs a little bit more. I'm not saying a ton more, but a little bit more. I think Josh Allen is still QB1 to me. I think Jalen Hurts is still comfortably in that conversation. I wouldn't say anyone's crazy for taking Jalen. But I just think that Josh Allen means more to his individual team's offense than Jalen Hurts does. I think that, you throw a backup QB in, that has a similar skill set, just a replacement level player with a skill set to both teams. And I think the team that looks significantly better is is the Eagles. Obviously, you have two dynamic weapons on the outside. You have Dallas Goedert at tight end. Now you have Barkley, really good O-line. I think the concern that you have for Jalen really is how much further can we get into that ceiling in terms of passing? Because we've seen Josh Allen give us legitimate QB1 seasons passing, legitimate QB1 seasons just as a runner. He's kind of the composite profile that you're looking for. And that's why we're so excited about an Anthony Richardson is you don't get 6'5", 240 dudes that can run like that very often. We've seen one before Allen. His name was Cam Newton. He was pretty good. But even he never had quite the passing pedigree of an Allen. So I'm still team Josh Allen QB1 until I have a reason to be otherwise.
And I would say this to anyone that is potentially buying into Josh Allen in Dynasty. Last year, Pat Mahomes had no weapons. Pat Mahomes really couldn't do shit. QB8 in fantasy overall. So the good quarterbacks can make it happen. Good quarterbacks can make it happen. And Josh Allen does have the rushing floor. So I'm not nervous about buying into a superstar like Josh Allen. This next one's the only triple threat match that we have on the list. All second-year wide receivers, former first-round picks, Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison or Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Give me Zay Flowers. And I know that they're going to be people.
The Buckeye Nation is pissed right now.
I know. I was going to say there are going to be people that are upset with me that it's not JSN, but until Lockett moves, there's serious question marks there. For Addison, the biggest question that I have is what is JJ McCarthy at the next level up, right? Or Sam Darnold as they're, I guess, planning early on in the season.
Sounds like it.
Hey, tell Matt to revive the Sam Darnold MVP campaign from last year. I love Addison. I love Smith-Njigba. I just think that Zay Flowers is so uniquely set up to be the guy. All of the dirty work is done by a Mark Andrews, whereas JSN and Addison are going to be asked to do some of the dirty work in their spots. Zay Flowers is just set up to smash, man. We loved him last year. No reason to not love him again. I think he is one of the most dynamic young players at any position we have in the game right now. They're all great. It's just if I'm picking one to invest my stock into in Dynasty, it's probably Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers last year as a rookie was already top 10 in a lot of our winning route metrics at Player Profiler. And now he's really just going to be competing with Mark Andrews. Rashad Bateman is kind of falling on his face so far early again. They brought in a one-trick pony in Tez Walker, who his best trick will probably be getting Zay Flowers more open, to be honest. I love the call, but let me just follow up with this. Tyler Lockett's traded tomorrow to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is JSN the answer here?
I think so because I think, I went on with this last year. I flag planted even after the season. I thought Geno Smith had a really good year last year. And much like Trevor Lawrence, as people are kind of getting the chance to watch every single game and break everything down, because even here's the hand of God answer. We don't get to watch every single thing that happens every week in the detail that we want to. That's really when we get to do it, is the offseason, when you really get to form your takes about what a player's 2023 was, is the 2024 offseason. When you get a chance to sit down and watch every snap that Trevor Lawrence took and Geno Smith took. I thought Geno was every bit as impressive as he was in 2022. Just the cast around him let him down a little bit more. I really do think that he's capable of being a top 10, 12 quarterback next year. And that's more than enough to pilot JSN to the seasons that Lockett had. And, Metcalf is a really, really good wide receiver. He just does very specific things. It's not like, you ask DK to run the entire route tree. He's just bigger, stronger, faster than everybody, which works 95% of the time. So why would you ask, you're not renting a Porsche 911 to move. That's what it is. So
you're not towing your buddy's shit in the back of a Porsche 911.
Yeah. And so I think that's where, DK Metcalf, I don't want to call him a one-trick pony because he's absolutely not. He just does very specific things supremely well. But yeah, for me, I think that would change JSN's situation enough to where I would move him above Zay Flowers. But again, that's, if he doesn't If Tyler Lockett doesn't move this year, that's another year of JSN production as a true number 2 that we would have lost. So for now, I'm going Zay Flowers, but obviously would love that situation for my guy.
Prospect wise, skill set wise, even I'm not making the comparison. I just think role wise, JS, with no Tyler Lockett, JSN could be a little bit more of that Jamar Chase role where I think DK is best suited in that T. Higgins, right around 100 targets. Let him be an absolute monster, bigger, faster, stronger than everyone else in the field. So that would make a whole lot of sense here. Let me ask this. This is two running backs that are, I think being, I don't know if undervalued is the right word, but they're not really being hyped. Najee Harris or Javonte Williams?
Oh, boy.
Tough one.
Give me Javonte, just barely, because Najee's value was so always, and I mean always, volume driven, whereas Javonte at least showed in spurts that when he wasn't given RB1 touches, he could give you RB2 weeks. I think Najee so desperately relies on the volume that I can't do it. I can't do it. I know that there are people that are, it's Najee Harris is so Joe Mixon-esque to me, where it's, if I give you 25 touches, you're going to be awesome for fantasy. If I give you 12, you're unplayable.
Yeah.
I think Javonte Williams does more with 12 than Najee Harris does with 12. And that's why on my end, I'll go Javonte Williams.
Bonus one here. Was it Devin Smith or no, actually, I got a better one for you. This is a college pick 'em here for fun. Drew Allar or Will Howard in Dynasty?
I think the talent is Drew Allar, for sure. I like Will Howard.
I love Will Howard. Dude, I've been diving into Will Howard. There is no better. This might be a bold take. There is not a quarterback in the entire NCAA that I'd rather have on 3rd and 6 from the 6 than Will Howard.
It's funny because last year, if you had asked that question, people would have given you a million different answers. And as someone that watched him, the guy that I would want on 3rd down is JJ McCarthy, because every single big 3rd down Michigan had last year, when they ran on 1st and 2nd down and just got nothing, they asked McCarthy to miraculously bail him out on 3rd and 8, and he did it over and over and over again. I don't think that gets nearly discussed enough when talking about his accolades and all the things that he's done. But it's tough for me to say, when you've got the thing about Allar that drives me nuts is you have so much talent. When you have a guy that's 6'4", 6'5", 240, we just talked about this. They just don't make them like that. You don't find QBs that look like Drew Allar. And so we're hoping that, sorry, Lance, at Kansas, Andy Kotelnicki is the new OC at Penn State. He's from Kansas. They ran one of the most fun offenses you'll ever see.
That's right.
And, we're hoping that he can kind of unlock the things in Drew Allar. Do I think that he wins a Heisman? No. Do I think Penn State wins a national title? No. But I think a lot of the things that he can grow at in this probable last year at Penn State before he goes to the NFL, I think he can turn himself back into what we thought he was, which is a 1st-round NFL draft pick.
Buckeye Nation, let the record show that Anand Nanduri chose against the Buckeyes 2 out of the 3 times he had a chance.
Hey, man, I'm here to be objective. I get to be a fan sometimes. This is not one of those times.
I love it, Anand. Thank you so much for coming on the show. That was a blast, getting into some of the weeds and getting into these Dynasty Rankings. That was awesome. So please take a minute, let the people watching know what, where they can find your content and where they can get in touch with you. What are you working on? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So, obviously, we're working on some stuff behind the scenes that you guys will get to see soon. Matty and I had some discussions about that when we were up in Detroit. But you can find me on Twitter at Nanduri NFL. You can find me on the Decision Point here on the Roto Underworld Player Profiler podcast feed with Matt Kelly, where we talk about all things general managers and what their job actually entails, because they're kind of seen as hand to hand with head coaches, which is absolutely not what their job description is and not what they're doing. But yeah, man, I have a great time hopping on, and we got to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll get you on coming in during the season. This was a blast. You can find me on X at Matty Kiwoom, the game plan, trade gods, blue chips, futurecast, the hurdle over here on the Player Profiler network of shows. Make sure you subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel and the Player Profiler News YouTube channel. Smash the like button. Leave a comment. What are some of the hype that you're buying into? Or maybe some of the hype you're fading. Leave it in the comments right here. And Anand, that was a blast. Thank you so much. We'll definitely do this again. Keep game planning, my friends, and I will see you next week. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.